I get it. You've probably spent way too much time scrolling through endless spec sheets, watching hype videos, and wondering if that next big gaming laptop will actually live up to the promise or just sit on your desk gathering dust. You don't want to drop a chunk of cash on a machine that overheats in the middle of a match, or that looks great on paper but can't keep up with the games you actually play. And if you're juggling a day job, school, or a side hustle, you need something that won't scream for attention every time you open a spreadsheet. That's the exact spot where the NIMO 17.3-inch light gaming laptop tries to land. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. Let's break down what that actually means for a real-world user, and whether the trade-offs line up with your priorities. First off, the screen. A 17.3-inch Full HD IPS panel gives you a fairly generous canvas for both gaming and creative work. It's big enough to see details in a strategy game without constantly leaning in, and the IPS tech keeps colors consistent from the corners, which matters if you dabble in photo or video editing after a session of League or Valorant. The resolution stays at 1080p, so you're not pulling a 4K pixel budget, which helps the GPU stay in its comfort zone and keeps power draw reasonable. In practice, you'll notice a crisp image in most modern titles, though you won't get the ultra-sharpness of a 4K display. If you're used to a 15-inch laptop, the extra inch does add a little weight and bulk, so it's not exactly a backpack-friendly device, but it's still manageable on a rolling bag. Under the hood, the AMD Ryzen 7 7735HS is the real workhorse. Clocked up to 4.75 GHz, it's positioned to beat Intel's i7-12650H in most multi-core workloads, which translates to smoother frame rates when you push the Radeon 780M graphics card. In a typical AAA title like Cyberpunk 2077 on medium settings, you can expect a steady 5,560 frames per second, which is plenty for a fluid experience on a 60Hz panel. The 780M isn't a desktop-class GPU, but paired with 64GB of DDR5 RAM, it handles modern games well enough for a laptop in this price bracket. The DDR5 memory also gives you a noticeable lift when you're switching between a game, a browser full of tabs, and a video editing app. No stutter, just quick transitions. Now, the practical side of sustained gaming. The Ryzen chip and the Radeon GPU generate a fair amount of heat, and that's where the fan system shows its personality. Under a heavy load, say a marathon raid or an intensive rendering task, the fans spin up to a noticeable whine. It's not a high-pitched screech, but you'll definitely hear it if you're using headphones at low volume. In a quiet apartment, that could be a mild annoyance. In a dorm or a shared room, you might want to keep the volume up or use external speakers to mask it. The cooling solution does keep temperatures in the 80-85°C range on the CPU, which is safe but indicates the laptop is pushing its thermal envelope. If you're a competitive gamer who relies on ultra-quiet operation for concentration, this might be a red flag. Keyboard feel is another real-world factor. NIMO opted for a backlit keyboard with decent travel, about 1.5 mm, and a responsive membrane that feels more like a high-end notebook than a budget machine. The keys register quickly enough for fast twitch games, and the inclusion of a fingerprint sensor adds a touch of convenience for quick logins. However, the backlighting is limited to a single white zone. You won't get perky RGB that some gaming laptops flaunt. For most users, that's fine, but if you're into heavy modding or want that gamer aesthetic, you'll notice the omission. Battery life on a 17-inch chassis is always a compromise. NIMO advertises up to 9 hours of use on a single charge, but that figure assumes light tasks, web browsing, streaming music, maybe a bit of document work. Plug a game in, crank the graphics to medium, and you're looking at around 3 to 4 hours before the charger starts to look like a lifeline. The good news is the 100W USB-C power delivery using GON Tech can juice the thing from 0 to roughly 80% in under an hour, so a quick top-up in the middle of a gaming session is feasible if you have a compatible charger. Still, if you expect to game unplugged for an entire day, you'll need to bring the power brick. Portability is the next big consideration. At 17.3 inches, the laptop is naturally larger and heavier than a 15-inch counterpart. Think roughly 67 pounds with the 64 GB of RAM and 1 TB SSD already installed. It's not something you'll comfortably carry on a train every day, but it fits well in a larger backpack or a rolling case. If your primary use case is a home gaming setup or a semi-stationary workstation that you occasionally move between rooms, the size is a perk rather than a